on to the next paper of the session. Abhijit Sadhale and Rashmi Sadhale, Sthala, Teertha and Bimba, Cultural Ecology of Hindu Kshetra.
Yes, Namaste. Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaika Murte Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurte Namaha. I thank the organizers and the scholars who have presented the paper and this wonderful opportunity to learn and to share also. Today I'm going to speak about Sthala, Teertha, Bimba, the cultural ecology of Hindu Kshetra. When we speak of our Dharma Kshetras, we are all aware of beautiful nature, environment, which is a very crucial for almost all the Dharma Kshetras to begin with. But today we are going to dwell deeper into that, starting with the ecological perspective of a Sthala, Teertha and Bimba, and understand the dynamic relationship between Sthala, Teertha and Bimba in making of a Kshetra. And we're going to look at different Kshetras in detail about this. So I hand over to Rashmi, my co-author, for explaining about ecological perspectives.
Namaste, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Sthala, Teertha and Bimba are essential physical components of a Kshetra. We will learn them by citing the principles listed in many Vastu treatises and understand how Sthala as the perception of environment, Teertha as the ecological and cultural association, and Bimba in the relationship to the biodiversity of the immediate surrounding environment through the cultural practices. The principles from treatises speak not only about the flowering trees, blossoms, birds, animals, and insects in individual, but they speak about the environment as a whole, the ecosystem that is full of life. This environment is perceived in terms of sightings and also through the sensory aspects of touch, color, smell, and taste. When there is a reference to the Sukha Sparsha, there is a description of Varna. The text by Marichi especially tells about the Sugandha Sanyukta that speaks about the blossoms of flowering plants, which is essential for the pollination. The reference to Madhugandha Yukta gives a lot of importance to the honeybees. These insects in substantial proportion are the indicators of the good, healthy environment. So these treatises understand the Sthala in the environment as sustaining all living forms and describes it as Sarva Bija Prarohini, that is the potential of the land to regenerate. The traditional wisdom, starting from the appraisal of the individual species to the identification of the habitats, elaborates on the grouping of the elements for the site development. Kashyapa's Jnana Kanda speaks about the 9 types of land, understanding the grouping and relationship of the ground and water ecosystem. So Sthala for development is evaluated for the productivity of the land, sustenance of the life forms in the land, and its relation and relevance with the respect to Sthala. Similarly, the concept of Sthala identified as a sacred grove is ecologically so important as a biological repository. Sustaining on the cultural beliefs, one can study the apex species of flora and fauna of the particular region. Most of the sacred groves are also the origins of perennial water source of the medicinal value. So after drawing references and inferences from these treatises, we understand that Sthala is a multidimensional element. Its relation with the existing environment is not only in the ecological sense only, but it also has the metaphysical perspective and also in terms of receptive senses, experiential senses, and equally important is the sensory aspect. So in all, it is the holistic way of experiencing the Sthala in a Hindu way. Tirtha, in many treatises, is an utmost important entity in the complex planning and planning of the settlements. Tirthas gives the cultural response to the natural resource. So they are found across the country, not limited to the particular region, but they are worshipped from Himalayan ranges to the coastal low-lying swamps. As the water bodies, the most important resource, their conservation was so crucial to the communities and the cultural traditions and the occupations those were associated with that. Rivers in India are not only looked upon in their physical state, but they are valued in metaphysical senses too. This is especially with the river Ganga, who is known as Triloka Pathagamini, as she exists in Swarga, Bhutala, and Patala. Similar importance is given to the river Saraswati, Yamuna, Narmada, Godavari, and Kaveri, Indrayani. Naturally, they all have their network of the water channels. The confluence of two rivers, which is the meeting point of the two ecosystems with peculiar biotic and abiotic environment, form a rich environment after confluence that is celebrated as Sangam and is a very important part of a Kshetra. Tirtha is a unique phenomena in the mindscapes of Indian cultural history. The values of water become defined with human cultural values and are well expressed in Rigveda. So when we know the ecological values of the Tirtha and so the Vedic values and the cultural manifestation, this graphic would explain the importance of Tirtha in a Kshetra. Apart from the reservoirs, they are the important part of the temples, of the festivals, to the participation of the people in the activities, and draw the importance to the metaphysical values and the development of the cultural minds and to the Vedic values of the society. When we speak about Bimba, equally important to the iconographic attributes are the intangible cultural practices and their association with the biodiversity. These associations, those underline the affiliation to particular biodiversity, then incorporation in puja rituals and festivals are associated to it. So in this regards, the offering of Davana flower to the deity of Maharashtra, Shri Khandoba and Shri Jyotiba is an age-old practice. The shrubs grow in a peculiar ecosystem of Deccan Plateau. Similarly, in Goa, the offering of jasmine flowers to the goddess Marsa is centuries-old tradition. Famous for Zayanti Jatra, now the flowers are on the way to tag them as the GI tagging, indicating the site-specific properties of the flower. Similarly, Shakambari or Banashankar is associated with the sky full of branches. Sitting in a forest is worshipped by offering lots of vegetables. Those are harvested from the surrounding fertile land and observed during the celebration of Navratri. So this way, the biodiversity of the ecosystem is learned, practiced during the rituals of the particular deities. On this background, I request architect Abhijit to explain in detail the concept of Hindu Kshetra.
Hindu Kshetra is a spatial construct. It's a spatial construct of a Sthala, Teertha, and Bimba in a dynamic relationship with its environment, and it's multi-layered with cultural and ecological associations. Now, in this case, the natural elements not only form the essence of Kshetra, but they also define the extent of Kshetra also. So on your slide, you can see cartography, ancient cartography, medieval cartography of Kashi, as well as Devaprayag. Similarly, if you look at different kshetras, starting with a Pancha Kailash Kshetra. Now, Pancha Kailash Kshetra is located in a Kailash range high in the Himalayas. Now, it consists of 5 parvats: Adi Kailash Parvat with a Parvati Sarovar, Mani Mahesh Parvat with Mani Mahesh Tirtha, Kinnor Kailash with a Parvati Kunda, Shrikhanda Mahadev with 9 Sarovar, and Kailash Parvat with Manas Sarovar. Now, apart from having individual Tirthas, major source of rivers is the Kailash range and nearby watersheds. So these rivers irrigate a substantial portion of India or Bharat. And the rivers originating from this Kshetra have shaped the cultural narrative of the entire region of Bharat, starting from North India and carrying it further beyond that. So you understand the importance of natural elements in a Kshetra. Now, if you look little more to an urbanized example of a Kshetra, it's a Puri Kshetra, which is called a Shankar Kshetra. Now, it's a very interesting because though it has become urbanized, populated, it still retains seeds of its natural rootings. So let us understand that. Now, the very essence of Shankar Kshetra is the Kshetra itself is demarcated by 2 natural elements. On one side, it is Atharnala and river Vargavi. while on the other side, it is a Tirtharaj Mahodadi, which defines the physical extent of a kshetra. Now, this entire kshetra of a Shankar Kshetra is located in a 7 folds. And there are altogether 127 sacred sites have been identified, major sacred sites. Now, if you look deeper into all these sacred sites, you will realize that many of these sacred sites are natural elements. So I have listed few of them here. And if you look deeper into the nature of these natural sites, the typology of that, you will realize that it is a repository of an existing natural ecosystem, which is a deified. Now, why this is so important? It is important because Shankar Kshetra is dominated by coastal water ecology, coastal water ecosystem there, and various elements associated with that, spring, origin of spring, river, water management with reference to river has been deified and has been given importance. Now, not only the ecological part, but the Mahaprasadam or the functioning of temple or offerings are also related to this ecosystem. The entire agrarian economy sustaining variety and diversity of rices, traditional rice varieties, one of the largest, I think, in India, have been sustained in this region. Now, Manabhasa ritual is a cultural festival which happens and it links the ecology, the agrarian economy, the Shankar Kshetra, and it, in a very essence, Manabhasa ritual celebrates the integration of a rice growing community with the Kshetra and with the ecology also. So this is a very interesting, I'll not elaborate further, but this is a very interesting case where you see a low-lying delta type coastal land, which is conducive for rice cultivation, harnesses lots of varieties of rice, traditional varieties of rice, and who are connected to the Mahaprasadam of Shankar Kshetra. And these activities where the communities are involved are also connected by various cultural rituals, and the ecological principles associated with them are also deified. So it creates a very interesting cultural ecology of a Shankar Kshetra. Now let us look at another example, Durga Kshetra. Now this we are coming to the west coast of India. So Durga Kshetra is located in a Goa in a Antruz Pranta, that is Ponda. Now it is a part of a pristine watershed which extends from Siddhanath Hill to the extent of the river ecology. So it's a very interesting and a very broad, diverse kind of a topography. And it contains a lot of natural elements. It contains springs, it contains slopes, it contains plateaus, it contains water harvesting systems, it contains a variety of trees also. And each of these have been deified and have been associated with a sacred association. And the area is inhabited by communities which are affiliated to Kshetra by virtue of various rituals. There are customary rituals, there are yearly rituals, there are festival of Shigmomer, then there are other traditional pastries and associations. Then there are sacred processions which connect all these sacred sites. So if you look at it in deeper, you'll realize that this is one of the unique case where the water, right from when it falls on a plateau and forms of small waterfalls, is celebrated. A waterfall is deified. It's called Dudhsagar Azoba. Dudhsagar is a synonym for a waterfall. And Azoba is an elderly person. So he's a spirit of wise, is been accorded to the waterfall itself. There is a worship of a Vanadevi where springs originate at the forested slopes. And there is a worship of swamps also. Swamps are worshipped as an embodiment of a particular spirit into that. Now, they may not have a huge temples to that, but this very sense of connecting to a natural elements as a spirit, as a very spiritual existence is a very unique. Now, this is a kshetra is a very unique because at one end it worships tiger, that is at the top of the Siddhanath hill, while the other end there is a worship of a crocodile, and this is a perhaps one of the most unique worship in entire of a Bharat. The community associated with rivers collect mud from the very habitat of crocodiles and create a small crocodile and worship it yearly. Now, people who are worshipping it, I have interviewed them many times. I have been a part of their rituals also. They view crocodile as a protector of the water. They are very clear in ecological principles, and they consider crocodile protects their wetland-based ecosystem. So worship is both Acknowledgement of its importance also means of ensuring a community adherence to this belief. So Durga Kshetra, the topography, the ecology, the agrarian economy, the fish and swamp related activities and the rituals all connected and create a cultural understanding of an environment. So if you look at the overall layout of a Navadurga Kshetra, I have tried to map down here different land uses like forests, like orchards, like residencies, and sacred sites, important sacred sites located all across that. And the natural elements as they emanate from the Kshetra and until it meets the river. You will realize that entire Kshetra of Navadurga is acknowledged by community through rituals, festivals, which are based on essentially interrelationship between nature and culture. So these customs and rituals try to integrate these natural elements into their culture and their everyday life. So what is more interesting here is the hierarchy of ecological elements and flora fauna in forming a complete ecological unit is recognized and understood and followed in a deification of these elements and the customs associated. Now, rituals is a main means of ensuring that this community adherence continues further. So the ecological processes are fully integrated into cultural system of Kshetra, creating a cultural ecology of a Navadurga Kshetra. So this understanding from these three typographical Kshetra studies, we can understand that our view towards the environment is a very inclusive view. We do not view nature as a separate from a human being. We do not look them as a separate entities, but we are very much part of each other. In a Western protectionism, we speak of a sustainable utilization and a protection as a means of ensuring that sustainable utilization. So nature is a resource. So entire approach is a human centric. Whereas in our Hindu inclusive way of looking at things, we look nature and culture as entwined by a multitude of rituals and associations. And we are very much part of one another. So the focus is not about protecting nature from us or protecting ourselves from the nature. So the very focus is that of living with nature. And that's the essential difference. So I come to my last slide. The cultural ecology of Hindu Kshetra establishes relationship with the nature, which is based on the traditional wisdom. And it is evolved out by communities thriving, sustaining themselves, practicing over centuries, performing their dharmic way of life, traditional way of life. So creation of a harmonious environment conducive for all, as auspicious for growth and sustenance for all, is the essence of dharma. Dharayati iti dharma. So I would end by saying that today, instead of only creating environmental awareness, we also need to create awareness of our dharmic values, cultural values, and which have a potential of sustaining environment and making it part of our life once again. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Abhijit ji and Rashmi ji. Excellent paper. Abhijit ji every time comes with such an excellent, visually rich, research intense papers. He presented a paper on Himalayan meditation centers earlier, and that was again a rich experience, a visual experience. All his papers give us almost a tour experience. They take us from they take us places. This is such a research intense and such a wonderfully covered topic from temples, individual temple rituals, individual aspects of temples. Abhijit ji and Rashmi ji took us to a macro level of the entire kshetra itself, the entire area, and how there is an ecological awareness reflected in the idea of kshetra. Thank you very much for that. And I didn't see any questions in the Q&A box for this paper.